The Quiet American is an anti-war novel by English author Graham Greene, first published in the United Kingdom during 1955 and in the United States during 1956. It was adapted as movies during 1958 and 2002. The book uses Greene's experiences as a war correspondent for The Times and Le Figaro in French Indochina 1951–1954. He was apparently inspired to write The Quiet American during October 1951 while driving back to Saigon from Ben Tre Province. He was accompanied by an American aid worker who lectured him about finding a third force in Vietnam. Plot: Thomas Fowler is a British journalist in his 50s who has covered the French war in Vietnam for more than 2 years. He meets a young American idealist named Alden Pyle, a CIA agent working undercover. Pyle lives his life and forms his opinions based on foreign policy books written by York Harding with no real experience in Southeast Asia matters. Harding's theory is that neither communism nor colonialism are proper in foreign lands like Vietnam, but rather a third force, usually a combination of traditions, works best. When Pyle and Fowler first meet, Pyle says he would be delighted if Fowler could help him understand more about the country. Being much older, Fowler is more realistic and cynical. Fowler has a live-in lover, Fong, who is only 20 years old and was previously a dancer at the Arc-en-Ciel on Jacqueria Road, in Colin. Her sister's intent is to arrange a marriage for Fong that will benefit herself and her family. The sister disapproves of their relationship, as Fowler is already married and an atheist. So, at a dinner with Fowler and Fong, Pyle meets her sister, who immediately starts questioning Pyle about his viability for marriage with Fong. Towards the end of the dinner, Pyle dances with Fong, and Fowler notes how poorly he dances. Fowler goes to Fat Diem to witness a battle there. Pyle travels there to tell him that he has been in love with Fong since the first night he saw her, and that he wants to marry her. They make a toast to nothing and Pyle leaves the next day. Fowler gets a letter from Pyle thanking him for being so nice. The letter annoys Fowler because of Pyle's arrogant confidence that Fong will leave Fowler to marry him. Meanwhile, Fowler's editor wants him to transfer back to England. Pyle comes to Fowler's residence and they ask Fong to choose between them. She chooses Fowler, unaware that he is pending a transfer. Fowler writes to his wife to ask for a divorce in front of Fong. Fowler and Pyle meet again in a war zone. They end up in a tower, and their discussion topics range from their sexual experiences to religion. As they escape, Pyle saves Fowler's life. Fowler goes back to Saigon, where he lies to Fong that his wife will divorce him. Pyle exposes the lie and Fong begins residence secretly with Pyle. After receiving a letter from Fowler, his editor decides that he can stay in Indochina for another year. Fowler goes into the midst of the battlefield to witness events. When Fowler returns to Saigon, he goes to Pyle's office to confront him, but Pyle is out. Pyle comes over later for drinks and they talk about his pending marriage to Fong. Later that week, a car bomb is detonated and many innocent civilians are killed from the blast. Fowler realizes that Pyle has allied himself with General The, a renegade general, whom he hopes will prove to be the third force described in Harding's book. Local sources reveal that they caused the bombing, and Pyle is thus enabling deaths of innocent people. Fowler is emotionally conflicted upon this discovery, but ultimately decides to participate with an assassination plot against Pyle. Though the police suspect that Fowler is involved, they cannot prove anything. Fong goes back to Fowler as if nothing had ever happened. In the last chapter, Fowler receives a telegram from his wife in which she states that she has changed her mind and will begin divorce proceedings. The novel ends with Fowler thinking about his first meeting with Fong, and the death of Pyle. Major characters: Thomas Fowler is a British journalist in his 50s who has been covering the French war in Vietnam for more than 2 years. He has become a very jaded and cynical man. He meets Alden Pyle and finds him naive. Throughout the book, Fowler is often caught in lies, and sometimes there may be speculation that he is lying to himself. Fowler's relationship with Vietnamese woman Phong often intensifies the conflict of the story, especially between Fowler and Pyle. Fowler is also used as a metaphor to describe the character. Alden Pyle is the quiet American of the title. A CIA agent working undercover, Pyle is thoughtful, soft-spoken, intellectual, serious, and idealistic. He comes from a privileged East Coast background. His father is a renowned professor of underwater erosion whose picture has appeared on the cover of Time magazine. His mother is well respected in their community. Pyle is a brilliant graduate of Harvard University. He has studied theories of government and society, and is particularly devoted to a scholar named York Harding. Harding's theory is that neither communism nor colonialism is the answer in foreign lands like Vietnam, but rather a third force. Usually a combination of traditions works best. Pyle has read Harding's numerous books many times and has adopted Harding's thinking as his own. Pyle also strives to be a member of this third force. U.S. military counterinsurgency expert Edward Lansdale, who was stationed in Vietnam 1953 to 1957, is sometimes cited as a model for Pyle's character. Phong, Fowler's lover at the beginning of the novel, is a beautiful young Vietnamese woman who stays with him for security and protection, and leaves him for the same reason. She is considered by Fowler as a lover to be taken for granted and by Pyle as someone to be protected, but Green never makes clear which, if either, of these opinions is actually the truth. Pyle's desire for Phong was largely interpreted by critics to parallel his desire for a non-communist South Vietnam. Her character is never fully developed or revealed. She is never able to show her emotions, as her older sister makes decisions for her. She is named after, but not based on, a Vietnamese friend of Green's. Bigot, a French inspector at the Sûreté, investigates Pyle's death. He is a man anguished between doing his duty and doing what is best for the country. He and Fowler are oddly akin in some ways, both faintly cynical and weary of the world, hence their discussion of Blaise Pascal. But they are divided by the differences of their faith. Bigot is a Roman Catholic and Fowler an atheist. Literary significance and reception. The novel was popular in England and over the years has achieved notable status, being adapted into films in 1958 and most recently in 2002 by Miramax, featuring Michael Caine and Brendan Fraser and earning the former a Best Actor nomination. However, after its publication in the USA during 1956, the novel was widely condemned as anti-American. It was criticized by The New Yorker for portraying Americans as murderers, largely based on one scene in which a bomb explodes in a crowd of people. According to critic Philip Stratford, American readers were incensed. Perhaps not so much because of the biased portrait of obtuse and destructive American innocence and idealism in Alden Pyle, but because in this case it was drawn with such acid pleasure by a middle-class English snob like Thomas Fowler, whom they were all too ready to identify with Green himself. Adaptations. Film The Quiet American. The Quiet American. Radio BBC Radio 4, classic serial, dramatized in 3x60 episodes by Gregory Evans. Documentary ABC Australia. Documentary Graham Greene. The Quiet American.